The Gates of Hell developers have finally confirmed what the faction for the next DLC will be, but it was kind of hidden in the middle of devblog number 150. We'll go over that and the rest of this devblog, which mostly covers the 82nd Airborne operation near Nijmegen, which will be part of the upcoming Airborne DLC. So it is official, the British and Commonwealth are coming to Gates of Hell, though what is interesting to mention is that they specifically say here that this first DLC will feature the British and Commonwealth Western Front content or units. Does this mean there'll be more than one British and Commonwealth DLC? I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into some of my theories later on in the video, but before we get into maybes and what ifs, I figured we should actually cover the facts in the rest of the devblog first. I want to mix a little bit of history into this video, specifically because it features my old hometown. Feel free to use the timestamps to skip throughout the video. So this devblog covers the Battle of Nijmegen, which is featured in the Airborne DLC, which should be coming out soon, TM. Something near to my heart, as I used to live close to the city for almost 20 years of my life. The US 82nd Airborne dropped around the city with not only the intention to capture the city and the two bridges over the Waal River at Nijmegen, but to also capture almost half a dozen other bridges in the region. Their goal was to capture and hold these bridges and defend them against German counterattacks. If successful, this would allow the British 30th Corps to drive north and hopefully eventually reach Arnhem, where British paratroopers were to capture and hold bridges over the Rhine River. The American 101st Airborne landed further south towards the Belgian-Dutch border near Eindhoven and Veghel, with similar objectives to capture and hold bridges until relieved by the 30th Corps. The 82nd not only had to capture and hold bridges behind enemy lines without really any support, they were also tasked with setting up a blocking position on a strategic hill to the east of the city. In this devlog, they specifically mention the Waal Crossing, and it'll be the 7th mission taking place a few days into Operation Market Garden. We know the whole Airborne DLC will come with 12 missions, and since there are no British forces yet, we know any Market Garden missions will feature the American 101st and 82nd Airbornes only. Perhaps a mission covering the events in the lead up to the Waal Crossing will showcase taking some of the other bridges or defending the hill to the east of the city against German counterattacks. I definitely hope that Nijmegen and the surrounding area will be featured in more than just one mission. So in Mission 7, however, Nijmegen is in ruins, and making an advance through it is quite tough, even with the support of the just arrived British 30th Corps. Gates of Hell recently saw the addition of the largest officially made asset in the game, with the Liberation DLC, this being the Cologne Cathedral. However, it's already being surpassed by the Nijmegen Bridge asset in-game, coming with the Airborne DLC, which in real life is about 600 meters long from end to end. Historically, the British brought up little canvas assault boats, which realistically can't hold even a dozen men, with which the 82nd were to be crossing the Waal River. The goal to land on the northern side of the river, flank the German defenders at both the rail and the road bridge, and allow the tanks of 30th Corps to advance north towards Arnhem. Now, of course, there were British soldiers, as well as there was British armor supporting the crossing from the south bank. Seeing as the models for them just won't be in-game with the release of the Airborne DLC, this might be tough to recreate. British tanks shot smoke rounds towards the north bank, but due to heavy winds, these were mostly ineffective anyway. The 82nd Airborne men will be very vulnerable to German machine gun, tank, and artillery fire as they cross the river. With 26 boats initially beginning the first trip, the second wave of boats going south to north again only consisted of 13 boats that were still operable. After reaching the other shore, a German-occupied fort and defensive positions had to be overcome before the north ends of both bridges could be attacked. Almost 50 American paratroopers were KIA, and multiple dozens of the roughly 250 men who crossed were wounded in action. Some of the KIA were even men who drowned when their boat sank or capsized during the crossing. Nowadays, a third bridge exists, which is actually the second road bridge named the Crossing after this event. Each night, 48 pairs of lights illuminate from the south to the north end of the new bridge as a memory to the 48 who crossed south to north and passed away during or after the crossing of the Waal to secure the northern bridge entrances. I'm very excited, of course, to see Nijmegen back and recreated in Gates of Hell, a city I used to live around and go to school in, and I crossed both the original bridges many times via bike, car, and train, and I'm very excited but also curious how they're going to recreate the area. Hopefully we'll even see one of the places I used to live in one of the missions. Regarding the British and Commonwealth DLC, it does specifically say again that this is, quote, first DLC will feature British and Commonwealth content from the Western Front, end quote. I'm of the opinion that we'll see another Scorched Earth sort of / Airborne type DLC after the upcoming British one, but before the next DLC that will add another faction or factions. This first DLC may cover some British or Commonwealth battles in Normandy, such as near Caen, or follow 30th Corps on their drive north during Market Garden. Of course, the brutal battle for the Scheldt, Operation Varsity, and tons of other battles on the Western Front during 1944 and 1945 featuring Commonwealth units are going to be eligible. However, something that adding the British will allow the Gates of Hell developers to do that they haven't been able to do before would be to cover the German advance into Belgium, Norway, and France in 1940. This would add some early war content that we have not seen in Gates of Hell, though it's a question whether or not Norway, for example, would fall under that Western Front descriptor. However, since the devblog specifically mentions Western Front, I think the following ideas may be possible, but probably somewhere down the line as smaller DLCs. For example, the Battle of Crete, as well as the Battle of Greece, could be showcased, though with a little bit of make-believe, and of course omitting the heroics of the Greek army. As much as a Greek faction would be cool to see, I sadly doubt the developers will want to add a smaller faction like that, even just for historical accuracy. Adding the North African theater as a DLC, something that is likely too. However, this would likely be a larger DLC and not one of these smaller intermediate ones, because it would require a lot of new assets for landscapes, terrains, and buildings, and actually would be an interesting way to introduce Italy as a new faction as well. Of course, Italy as both a faction and as a front is still something I believe will happen too. I went over this in more detail in a previous video, so I won't go too far into it here. It would actually require, of course, a lot of additional assets for buildings and terrains, so again, probably a larger, most likely faction adding DLC. Finally, the Pacific is something that a lot of people are asking for and have been asking for a while, which has the same issues as North Africa and Italy, requiring a ton of new assets and models, and of course a whole new faction in the form of Japan. One day I'm sure we'll see the US and Commonwealth fight it out against the Imperial Japanese on Pacific Islands as an official part of Gates of Hell, but that is probably too far away for now. It would also require a different approach to battles, as the Japanese wouldn't have an answer to most medium or heavier allied tanks, unless, like Men of War Assault Squad, they could access 2 different late war prototypes. So what do you think? What will be the next faction, though we're getting quite far ahead of ourselves after the Commonwealth, and what do you reckon will be in a future smaller DLC? Let me know down in the comments below. Hopefully you like this Gates of Hell mixed with history and some speculation about the next DLC all in one video, and I'll catch you in the next one.